Seaside is something old and something new. It makes reference back 100 years ago, yet when it came upon the scene 30 years ago, it was just this bolt of lightning.
Well, Seaside is my life's work, and I didn't know that it would be my life's work when I started it 30 years ago. But in fact, moving very slowly has been one of the secrets of Seaside's success, because we were able to move at a pace where we can learn from our mistakes. The increments of risk were quite low, so we never had to load ourselves up with debt. Sustainable development in the financial sense is one of the underlying principles that we've tried to demonstrate in Seaside. The others are, it was the first green project of this era in that it used xeriscaping. We didn't know that phrase. We just liked all the scrubby native plants, and we didn't want to hear lawnmowers on Sunday mornings, so we said no front lawns.
Seaside is all about emotion. In a short time, you have intimacy with it. You can walk from one side to another and back, and to the beach and back, and you don't get lost. There's just no way you can get lost in Seaside, because there's always a path leading you somewhere. You feel like you're part of it, even though you're only staying there for a week. And then you come back next year and you're welcomed again by your name. And the same person is there behind the cash register or at the front desk. People are hungry for that connection.
By making a town that was walkable and that was human in scale, where all the streets and squares felt like outdoor living rooms where you actually felt comfortable and wanted to spend time, we could revive civic life.
Seaside recovered a lot of knowledge, human knowledge and experience that had been set aside during the course of 2 world wars, a depression, and rebuilding after World War II. One of the things that was learned from Seaside early on was that people liked an environment of traditional urbanism where houses are close to the streets are narrow, and generally speaking, it's a compact and neighborly situation. And besides the fact that it was interesting to learn that, the banks learned that, so that the next project, it wasn't just an existing place, it was about a whole new place being built under new standards.
Seaside sparked this whole panhandle of Florida. 30 years ago, the panhandle of Florida was known as the Redneck Riviera. It's where the Georgia boys would go down and drink on the beach. And by about 10 years ago, the New York Times was referring to the panhandle as the Hamptons of the Southeast. And so this complete turnaround.
Precisely because it's a resort, which is in fact on the rental program, has permitted hundreds of thousands of people to experience this kind of living. And so it's projected its influence everywhere. Urbanism cannot be assessed from photographs. It can't even be assessed from short visits. It has to be lived.
An important lesson I learned from Seaside is that all the details lend your work integrity. And there needs to be a group of people, 1 person, 2 people, that actually follow up on these details. So one part isn't out of alignment.
Seaside was really the kind of testing ground for how to make a better place. The zoning codes and the building codes that we have all across this country are codes that tell you what you cannot do. Okay? They're written in the negative. Now, the codes that had to be written was not what you could not do, but what you must do to make a good place. So it's prescriptive to do good design that is in an urban context. We decided that we needed a way to test this code, and both my partner Peter and I kind of said, this is such a great way to teach students about urbanism. So we set about, doing a project where it was really designing a house or designing a small apartment building or designing a mixed use. We could see what Seaside, this town, would actually merge, and the students learned a lot about urban design in a backhanded way. One, that you have to pay attention to the context, you know, that another architect, that you have a set of rules that make a place, and you have to adhere to those rules. And in life, you always have rules. So we were able to, you know, test the code, test all the different types.
Seaside can teach the students the wonder of discovering where you want to go when you're not quite sure. Having the courage to develop an idea that maybe is a product of a longer discussion. When Robert Davis and Daryl Davis and Andrés, Duany, Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk talked about Seaside initially, the ideas were very, I would say, conventional for the time. And how incrementally the plan changed and the ideas changed, and how they allowed themselves to learn from each other and not have the hubris to seal out the new ideas that were coming in, is a real lesson.
We are currently going through a painful growth process of transitioning from developer control to control of various things by either homeowners or by nonprofits or other organizations.
Of course, now the models which imitate Seaside have become so perfect and also so ambitious, and a lot of very wealthy people live there, that Seaside doesn't really compare to those, and it has to improve itself in order to stay in the race, in a way.
What is in the future for the community itself, I think, will probably be an ongoing discussion about how to maintain the things that people who live there love, and how to improve other things, and which are the maintainable pieces to be preserved, and which are the pieces that might change over time. And that is, in effect, the mark of a mature community.
I think we're going to see a lot of changes with the generation of kids that grew up from when they were toddlers in Seaside, because that's inevitable. I mean, if you make something that can't be changed, it's dead.
If Seaside is a real place, it begins to enter history and begins to oscillate up and down, and having good periods and bad periods, and then good periods again, etc. And I don't see why Seaside should be exempt from that. What is interesting as an urbanist is to actually think in the long run what happens to such places. And of course you can play it out and then prevent the worst of the oscillation. And you can actually begin to vaccinate the place against the things that normally affect the downs of a community such as Seaside.
Ultimately, Seaside's a lesson in leadership. It's about having a sense of belief in your idea, but allowing others to also explore it, and delegating the final execution to those that to others.